We're going to begin this Tuesday morning with a pivotal day ahead in the ongoing investigation into the murder of conservative activist Charlie Kirk.
The suspect in the case is set to be formally charged today in connection with Kirk's murder. 22-year-old Tyler Robinson was arrested last Friday on a variety of charges, including suspicion of aggravated murder. That could trigger the death penalty if he's convicted. It was nearly a week ago when police say Robinson shot and killed Kirk, who was speaking at a rally at Utah Valley University. Vigils continue to be held across the country remembering Kirk, all while the finger-pointing over political violence dominates the media. NBC's Bofta Yimam joins us now from Washington with the very latest. Bofta, good morning.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. Formal charges, as you mentioned, expected to be filed within hours against the suspect, who police say was also linked to evidence found at the scene. And according to new reporting by the Washington Post, the suspect appeared to confess in an online chat before Kirk's death. 22-year-old Tyler Robinson is expected to face several charges, including aggravated murder in connection with the attack on conservative influencer Charlie Kirk. According to the Washington Post, Robinson appears to have confessed in an online chat not long before turning himself in, writing, "Hey guys, I have bad news for you all. It was me at UVU yesterday. I'm sorry for all of this." The Post citing two people familiar with the chat and screenshots. Another possible sign that may be part of the evidence, a text message exchange, says FBI Director Kash Patel.
His family has collectively told investigators that he subscribed to left-wing ideology, and he had a text message exchange, he the suspect, with another individual, in which he claimed that he had an opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and he was going to do it because of his hatred for what Charlie stood for.
The FBI says the suspect is not cooperating, but points out they found the suspect's DNA on two pieces of evidence. While authorities haven't confirmed a motive, the president blames the left.
Looks like he was radicalized over the internet, and it's radicalized on the left. He's a left.
The Trump administration's effort to find and punish Americans who criticize Charlie Kirk intensifying, including measures to use the federal government to crack down on what the administration called vast domestic terrorist networks.
We are going to use every resource we have at the Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and throughout this government to identify, disrupt, dismantle, and destroy these networks.
Back in Utah, classes resume on campus as the suspect remains on special watch status, meaning closer supervision. Meanwhile, plans for a massive memorial service are underway for this Sunday in Kirk's home state of Arizona. Joe and Savannah, back to you.
Bofta Yimam, thank you.
We want to dig in a little bit more on something that you just heard there in Bofta's story. Several employers have fired people for their comments on Charlie Kirk's assassination, while the government is looking at what people inside their own ranks have posted. NBC News senior national security correspondent Courtney Kuby has details.
The Trump administration's effort to find and punish Americans who criticize Charlie Kirk intensifying.
So when you see someone celebrating Charlie's murder, call them out. And hell, call their employer.
Some employers already firing or suspending people for their posts about Kirk, impacting teachers, commercial pilots, doctors, and even NFL staff. Secretary of State Marco Rubio floated revoking critics' visas.
We should not be giving visas to people who are going to come to the United States and do things like celebrate the murder, the execution, the assassination of a political figure.
Two defense officials telling NBC News Secretary Pete Hegseth has directed his staff to look for posts from service members. Pentagon leaders quickly getting behind that policy. The Marines say they fired a recruiter for an alleged post about Kirk's death reading, "Another racist man popped." Experts say expect those firings to be challenged in court.
Simply saying unpleasant things or unflattering things or things you just disagree with concerning another person who's not a public official, who was never a public official, I think cannot be punished by any part of the government.
On social media, people who've criticized Kirk are being called out. Their names and photos widely circulated. One post about an Army officer who allegedly shared direct quotes from Kirk has been viewed more than 7 million times.
They're not giving up their First Amendment rights when they swear an oath to serve in the military.
Absolutely not. They may apply somewhat differently, but the principle is the same.
Our thanks to Courtney for that report.
FBI Director Kash Patel is set to face some intense questioning later this morning. He's scheduled to appear before the Senate Judiciary Committee for an oversight hearing.
This comes after Patel defended his handling of the investigation into Charlie Kirk's murder. That includes his decision to post on social media that someone was in custody for the shooting. That person was later released during the manhunt for the suspect.
For more on what we can expect at the hearing, we're joined now by NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Melanie Zanona and retired FBI agent Rob D'Amico. Good morning to both of you. So, Mel, let's begin with you. Lawmakers are expected to grill Kash Patel about his tenure so far at the FBI, including the investigation into Charlie Kirk's murder. He was on Fox News yesterday, as we just saw, and he discussed the invitation, spoke in detail about the evidence. But what are some of the tougher questions we expect he's going to face today?
Yeah, no doubt. He is going to face some very intense scrutiny, at least from Democrats, about his leadership at the FBI. Of course, as you mentioned, top of mind is this assassination of Charlie Kirk last week. We expect that he'll be asked for an update, so we could learn some new developments about the case during today's hearing. That's certainly something we're watching out for. But he's also going to face some really tough grilling and some tough questions from Democrats about a lot of his decision-making and potentially from some Republicans as well. He posted on social media the hours after the killing that the suspect was in custody, and then only 90 minutes later he had to provide an update saying the suspect had been released from custody. Also, our colleagues at NBC report that same night, the night of the killing, Kash Patel was dining at some exclusive New York City hotspot restaurant. So just a lot of questions, particularly from his critics who think that Kash Patel is more interested in grandstanding or taking credit than he is in actually doing the work behind the scenes. And of course, he has no law enforcement experience, which is one of the concerns senators had before they confirmed him. But aside from Charlie Kirk, there's a ton of other things that lawmakers are going to want to ask him about. The Epstein case being another one. He was a proponent of pushing to release the files. That obviously has not happened since Trump took office. And then the other thing that he's going to be asked about is the purge of FBI officials. During his confirmation promise, he promised that he was not going to seek political retribution, particularly on agents who worked on the January 6th case. That has not happened. So it's going to be a really packed day of questioning. Guys.
Rob, let's bring you here into the conversation for some background on just how this kind of should have worked. Four former FBI officials have raised questions to NBC News about Patel's decision-making during this crisis. Mel just laid some of them out. Another reason, traveling to Utah before an arrest was made. They've said that maybe that could have distracted agents on the ground. What do you think, and what will you be looking out for in this hearing today?
Yeah, those are all true. If you worked in the FBI or if you worked in law enforcement, understanding how cases work, understanding when information goes out, understanding what an FBI director is there to do, these all have not fallen into the normal realm. And I think they've hurt the investigation. Anytime someone shows up like that, you have to then take resources to put them on showing them around, showing them the crime scene, when you should be doing other things. He was demanding information so that he could post it on X, again, taking agents and investigators away from what they're doing. Him yelling at everyone, him posting someone's the ups and downs of the early investigation. You don't put online because there are ups and downs. And if you've been in any investigations, you know that. So putting out that they had the subject without really confirming it, no one confirmed it. They just had someone that they were talking to. And if you've done these, you know that happens all the time. And you have to release people that aren't connected. So it just shows the inexperience.
I mean, Rob, you say he should be doing other things. Walk us through the role the FBI director has or should have in the first hours of a sensitive and high-profile murder investigation and manhunt like this one.
It's getting the resources FBI out to the people that are doing it. So he should have been talking to the SAC out there saying, what do you need? Talking to all the field offices around Salt Lake City, make sure they're ready, their evidence response teams if they need investigators, and being ready to fulfill that. Having the national folks, there's always national folks, the lab, the hostage rescue team, all these other folks that are back in D.C. And he pushed some of those out on the planes to get them out there, using those jets to fly the evidence back to lab so they can quickly look at it instead of flying executives around. That's what you should be doing. You have all of that. The FBI has a great command center in the Hoover building that you can run multiple national investigations, and that came after 9/11.
Mel, we know President Trump has defended Patel specifically when it comes to this investigation, but how much support does he have on Capitol Hill between how people feel about how he's handled this, but also things like the Epstein files that you've mentioned?
Well, as of right now, he still enjoys very wide support on Capitol Hill. We talked to a number of Republican senators last night, and we heard nothing but praise and positivity. And perhaps it's because President Donald Trump has come out and said that he still has confidence in Patel. But how he performs in today's hearing, and if he has a rocky performance in today's hearing, that could always influence Trump's opinion. And there are some conservatives on the panel, like Josh Hawley, for example, from Missouri, one of those senators who have been pushing to release the Epstein files. So he could face potentially some tough questioning. As of right now, though, still widely supported on Capitol Hill.
All right, Mel and Rob, thank you both. Appreciate it.
Well, President Trump's federal crackdown on crime in Democrat-led cities will now focus on Memphis, Tennessee.
The president signed an order yesterday creating what's called the Memphis Safe Task Force and authorizing the use of the National Guard there. He said the state's Republican governor, Bill Lee, had requested the White House's help, but Memphis's Democratic mayor told CNN he is not happy.
The effort will include the National Guard as well as the FBI, ATF, DEA, ICE, Homeland Security Investigations, and the U.S. Marshals. This team will deploy the full powers of federal law enforcement agencies and enforcement generally to restore public safety and get dangerous career criminals off of our streets.
NBC News White House correspondent Monica Alba joins us with the latest. Monica, good morning. So the mayor there, Paul Young, he said he only learned about this decision when it was on TV, that it was confirmed in this announcement from President Trump. What details do we know about this operation, and what about the president's threats to take over public safety in other cities generally?
Yeah, well, Savannah and Joe, it's interesting because the president said he wanted to replicate what he had done here in Washington, D.C. and Memphis. But as you know, in D.C., it's a little bit of a different situation because the president is allowed to take over the police department here. At least he was for 30 days. But that's not the case necessarily in Memphis. He can send in National Guard troops. Again, the governor is requesting that and signing off on that, and he's an ally of the president. But in terms of other federal law enforcement and what can actually be done there, there are some questions about how that will work. But we know from the Attorney General that this operation is set to start next week. And you are right. The president said there are other cities now that he is looking to do the same in. Chicago is one example, a place where he had wanted to go into, he said, a couple of weeks ago, and then he scrapped those plans, but said it's possible he could go there again, though we think he would face some legal opposition there based on the comments of officials, certainly the Illinois governor, who has said he doesn't want the president to come in to Chicago. But he also mentioned cities like Baltimore, St. Louis, and perhaps New Orleans, guys.
Monica, we have another overnight headline this morning. President Trump announced a massive new lawsuit against another major media organization. He says he's suing the New York Times for $15 billion and accused the newspaper of becoming a, quote, virtual mouthpiece for the radical left Democrat Party. What specifically is he accusing the Times of?
Yeah, the president is taking issue with much of their campaign coverage. He is saying specifically and bringing up in this complaint the idea that the New York Times wrote some articles and had an endorsement of Kamala Harris. Also, the president is taking issue with a book that was written by some of these reporters. And we should point out some of them in the past have been NBC and MSNBC analysts. And he says specifically that he believes this has been a years-long effort to undermine him. And that is what the president and his lawyers wrote in this complaint. And of course, this isn't the only outlet that the president has gone after in a similar vein. Remember that both ABC and CBS and Paramount settled lawsuits with the president. And earlier this summer, he did file a lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal and News Corp over that reporting surrounding what they allege to be some of those connections and ties to Jeffrey Epstein in that so-called birthday book.
Monica, we also want to ask you news we mentioned a little bit ago. The president revealed these details about a second deadly strike. This is on an alleged drug smuggling vessel in international waters yesterday. Now, he had said the ship was carrying these illegal narcotics from Venezuela to the U.S. He also mentioned in this post you can see on your screen that 3 male terrorists were killed, was how he put it. I mean, it also comes 2 weeks after the U.S. had blown up another military boat off Venezuela. That one killed 11 people. Tell us the information here. What evidence is the White House referencing? How are lawmakers reacting?
Yeah, this is certainly an issue where the legality of strikes like this are being raised by lawmakers and others. But the president is saying that he does believe that these vessels are carrying narcotics or carrying illegal drugs that they want to smuggle into the United States. So he is saying that he will act on those and he may continue to do that. He says that there were some recordings that were captured that indicated that is what they had in their cargo. And the president, when asked about this yesterday, said that when you see the explosion, and he says when you have images of what happened after that, he says you can see some of those giant cargo sacks that he says, again, contain drugs. So he's pointing to that as some of the evidence. But again, there are questions being raised about that. And overall, what the strategy is here of the administration, which continues to apply pressure to the Maduro government in Venezuela. Guys.
All right, Monica Alba, thank you so much.
Let's talk more about the escalating tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela. We want to bring in Jeff Ramsey. He's a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council. He studies Venezuela. Jeff, good to have you with us this morning. Let's start with the role that Venezuela plays in international drug trafficking. As we heard there, critics are calling this strike a violation of the law. It begs the question, has there been any proof presented of a connection between Venezuela and the fentanyl that's killing Americans here in the U.S.? And I ask that because often that's something we usually hear linked to drugs that are coming over the border from Mexico.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And I think that's the key question here. So, in the U.S., fentanyl really is the major drug problem we have. We saw over 50,000 Americans died of opioid overdoses just last year. The reality, at least according to the DEA, is that Venezuela is not a major transit country for fentanyl. Venezuela is a transit country for cocaine, but the DEA estimates that less than 5% of northbound cocaine actually passes through Venezuela on its way to the U.S. The vast majority of drugs bound for the U.S. pass through the Pacific Ocean. So, a lot of us are asking why we don't see greater military presence off the Pacific coasts of Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, if that's the real objective and we want to take this threat seriously.
The U.S. has deployed at least 8 Navy warships, also 10 stealth fighter jets. This is all to the South Caribbean Sea. What impact does a military buildup like that have on Venezuela? Do you think the U.S. is preparing maybe for something larger here, more engagement?
Yeah, Savannah, so, I think ultimately this is about regime change, but the U.S. so far does not want to send boots on the ground. The president's trying to drive cracks between Maduro and his inner circle and the military. The issue is that this strategy has been tried repeatedly over the last 20 years, and so far, it seems like if Maduro's good at anything, it's at keeping the upper ranks fat and happy while repressing the Venezuelan people. There's really no evidence of any military uprisings or massive protests on the horizon. So it seems like Maduro understands that the only way to remove him is if the U.S. decides to actually strike military targets inside Venezuela, which would be incredibly risky.
You mentioned regime change. Last month, U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi announced a $50 million reward for information leading to the arrest of Maduro. She accused him of using cartels to bring drugs to the U.S. Just how vulnerable is Maduro right now?
So, Maduro is widely unpopular in Venezuela. He's got less than 30% support inside the country, but he still has, by all accounts, the support of the military, the intelligence forces, as well as armed groups in Venezuela, like Colombian guerrillas and pro-government militia groups called colectivos across the country. So, that's why I really think that there's a real risk here that if we see the U.S. decide to take destabilizing actions inside Venezuela, we could actually end up with a Syria-style meltdown in South America, potentially leading to an armed conflict that could see millions more Venezuelans arriving at our doorstep. We already have about 8 million Venezuelans that have fled their homes in recent years due to the crisis in that country.
Jeff Ramsey, we appreciate your expertise. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Well, later this morning, we are expecting to see Luigi Mangione return to a New York courthouse for the first time in months for a hearing on a series of defense motions. So Mangione faces those murder and terrorism charges. This is in the killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson that happened in Manhattan last December. Well, today, lawyers for Mangione will push to have his state murder charges dismissed. They're doing that by claiming that the state and federal cases against him amount to double jeopardy. The 27-year-old faces the death penalty if convicted in federal court. Today's hearing might also tell us when the state trial will begin here in New York and whether that would come before a federal case. Mangione has pleaded not guilty to all charges.
Let's get a closer look now at what to expect this week with your morning news now weather.
And we have Angie Lastman here back with us in studio. Hi, Angie. Good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning to you. It is a soggy one so far for the Mid-Atlantic. That's going to be kind of the main headline today, and even for parts of this region as we get into the day tomorrow. But here's a look at your satellite and radar. You can see a big push of this moisture coming on shore, a lot of it in the form of thunderstorms. So there is some lightning and thunder that you'll notice here rumbling through this area at this hour, but still some heavy rain to come as the day goes on. So we are preemptively concerned about flooding. So that's why you see these flood watches up across parts of this region. Norfolk, Elizabeth City, Rocky Mount, all included in that. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of these get extended into the day tomorrow as well. We've got this area of low pressure kind of sitting just along the coast, and this is going to continue to push in batches of heavy rain across some of these same already soaked areas. On top of that, of course, the flooding, but the gusty winds will also be something that we watch for too. So maybe some down trees possible across that area for today. As we look ahead to tomorrow, still this low pressure hanging out right along the coast. We'll see that steady rain kind of slide up the Jersey coast. And on the backside of this, we'll be dealing with some of those onshore winds and potentially some cooler temperatures. You'll notice those differences here as we get into the day tomorrow. Between now and Wednesday, essentially a couple of inches of rain. And I think at some points we'll see those hourly rainfall rates upwards of 1 inch to 2 inches. So again, the flooding concern will be there specifically across parts of the Mid-Atlantic through at least Wednesday, and then we'll finally get a bit of a break. And then just switching gears quickly, guys, we've got, of course, we're in the peak of hurricane season. It's been a pretty quiet season so far, but we do have a tropical disturbance, 92L, that we're keeping a close eye on for a good chance of development. We're talking 90% chance that we could have a system by the time we get to Thursday. This will be something to watch, maybe down the line potential impacts to Bermuda, but again, we've still got a long way to go with this. It isn't expected to form into a depression or potentially a storm by until we get to Thursday. So something to watch on the horizon as we get to the end of the work week and into the weekend.
I'm finding some wood to knock on after
yeah,
you said it's been a quiet,
too. You and
quiet
me both.
season.
I know, I almost was apprehensive to even talk about how the season's been quiet because, you know.
We have to acknowledge it.
Yes,
all right.
exactly.
Thanks, Angie.
Thank you. Got it.
We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.